got shot and killed. He got shot 12 times, and you actually talked about this.
19.
Bloodhound Q50 was there when Bloodhound Lil Jeff got killed.
He was, yeah.
Right.
Have you been keeping up with what happened to Lil Jeff's killer after his tragic death? Well, the streets are buzzing because it looks like his alleged shooter might be gone for good after a major court decision. In this video, we're diving deep into the events leading up to Lil Jeff's murder. But first, let's break down this shocking courtroom verdict. In a move that didn't exactly surprise many, Chicago drill rapper Jeffrey L. Harris, better known in the streets as Bloodhound Lil Jeff, finally got some justice. Court records confirm that one suspect was taken into custody, and guess who it is? Trap City Rob! Born Robert Coleman, this dude found himself in the hot seat after being arrested in connection with the homicide. But this ain't just speculation. Officials say there was solid evidence against him. A key witness straight up identified Trap City Rob at the scene of the crime when shots were fired, ending Lil Jeff's life. But here's where it gets even crazier. Trap City. Rob did not go down without a fight. This wasn't some quiet hands-up surrender. Nah, this turned into a full-blown struggle between him and the Chicago police. Surveillance officers had been watching him closely and caught him armed while coming in and out of his apartment on South Rhodes Avenue. That alone was a huge problem because, let's not forget, Trap City Rob was already a convicted felon who legally wasn't even supposed to be near a firearm. The moment officers spotted him, they made their move. One officer approached Rob and warned him loud and clear that his body cam was rolling and he was under arrest. Sounds like a simple takedown, right? Wrong. Instead of cooperating, Rob snapped, yanking away and refusing to follow orders. That's when things started spiraling out of control. Trap City Rob was not going down easy. He went full dead weight, stiffening his entire body to make it nearly impossible for the officer to slap the cuffs on him. This wasn't just some minor resistance, this was a full-on physical standoff. According to the report, the officer had no choice but to use escort holds, control techniques, and even an emergency takedown just to get Rob under control. But in the middle of this chaotic struggle, something serious happened. A black loaded firearm suddenly slipped from Rob's thighs and hit the ground. That's right. A gun fell out during the scuffle, making it even clearer why officers had been on his tail in the first place. Even after that, Rob still refused to cooperate. It took a second surveillance officer jumping in to finally force the cuffs onto his wrists, but even then it wasn't simple. Due to Rob's size, they had to use 2 sets of handcuffs, and the pressure left injuries on his right wrist. But let's be real, this was far from over. Once they finally got him restrained, Rob was immediately hauled off to the 2nd District lockup. His actions
no
at the
doubt that
scene
Lil
made
Jeff
it
was
clear
actually killed during
he
the
wasn't
gunfight
getting any
last
special
year.
treatment. But here's where the plot twist. Despite all the chaos, the investigation into Lil Jeff's murder couldn't prove that Rob was actually the shooter. That's right, after all that, the murder charge was dropped. However, he wasn't walking away free. Since he was a convicted felon caught red-handed with a firearm, that gun charge wasn't going anywhere. He's definitely looking at some serious time behind bars. Meanwhile, social media exploded over the case, especially on Reddit, where people were not holding back. One user questioned, "I ain't well versed on Illinois self-defense laws, but it is insane to me that anybody would be charged with murder in this situation." And just like that, the internet was in an uproar. Was it because they kept firing even after he was down? That's the question that had Reddit buzzing. One user fired back, "Ain't no self-defense for overkill. Probably a couple shots or so, but not 19. And just like that, the internet debate was on fire. While people argued over whether Lil Jeff's killer was just defending himself or straight up executing him, another Reddit user shifted the conversation, this time questioning why Trap City Rob's gun charge wasn't being taken more seriously. One commenter didn't hold back, saying, "Free his A? For that armed habitual? He proved that day. Why made it a habit?" Basically, the argument was clear. If he kept getting caught with a gun, wasn't he proving that he was a repeat offender? Despite the serious nature of the case, a large part of the drill community seemed to respect Trap City Rob for how he handled himself afterward. It was almost like he was getting praised for standing on business rather than being condemned. And here's where things get crazy. It was almost like the entire case was solved on Reddit before the Chicago Police Department even started their official investigation. That's right, the Reddit detectives were already naming names and putting pieces together before authorities made a move. In fact, as soon as news of Lil Jeff's death hit the streets, the Reddit community wasted no time identifying Trap City Rob as the suspected shooter. While the city of Chicago was in shock, Reddit was in full troll mode. The platform exploded with disses and taunts, most of them aimed at the hood allegedly responsible for sending Lil Jeff to an early grave. One user dropped a chilling message: "Trap City is in danger forever now." While the trolling went on, some people were laser focused on finding out exactly who pulled the trigger, and as expected, members of Cheericology, the subreddit dedicated to Chicago drill culture, jumped in immediately, picking apart every detail and pointing fingers. They weren't waiting for the cops, they were already solving the case themselves. Just 2 days after Bloodhound Lil Jeff was gunned down, Cheericology was already buzzing with theories, and one name kept coming up: Trap City Rob. People weren't just throwing accusations in the air. Rob had been arrested multiple times at the same apartment complex where Lil Jeff was fatally shot. To many, it seemed like the dots connected too perfectly. Then things took a wild turn on the internet. In no time, a photoshopped image of Trap City Rob holding a football trophy started making the round. And guess what people were calling him? Defensive Player of the Year. The internet wasn't just speculating, they were full on mocking the situation. But at the same time, another version of his photo was circulating, this time with the word "wanted" plastered over it. Meanwhile, official news reports painted a grim picture. A deadly shooting on the south side of Chicago left one man dead, and the police were still searching for the suspect. The incident went down on Saturday at around 5:40 p.m. on the 6600 block of South Rhodes Avenue, the same area tied to Trap City Rob's name. Then came the leaked footage, an unverified video allegedly showing a man getting hit with multiple shots. The second that clip hit the internet, the streets and social media exploded with speculation. Whether the video was real or not, Trap City Rob's name was already being tied to the crime, and his face was everywhere. And here's where it gets even crazier. Before this whole situation, Trap City Rob's music career was practically non-existent. His songs weren't pulling in numbers, and he was barely recognized outside his block. But the moment his name started making headlines, his 2020 track, "What a Feeling," started racking up streams. Suddenly, being linked to one of the most savage killings in Chirac had turned him into an overnight internet sensation. But the internet wasn't done yet. On June 16th, Cheericology made yet another post, just a week after Lil Jeff's murder, featuring Trap City Rob's photograph front and center. The streets were talking, and the internet was putting all the pieces together before the cops even had a chance to catch up. Not even an hour had passed before people started zooming in on the details of Trap City Rob's latest photo, and what they found had folks shocked. Some sharp-eyed users noticed that Rob's shirt appeared to be a direct troll at Lil Jeff's death. If that's true, then this wasn't just some street beef. This was full-on disrespect after the fact. But let's take a step back. Before all this drama unfolded, Trap City Rob actually used to be cool with some members of the Bloodhound crew. Throwback photos surfaced, showing Rob posted up with Bloodhound Vert and another unidentified man. So what changed? How did a former associate end up being named in the biggest street crime case of the moment? To set the record straight, Rob, who is now called Unc Rob by the streets, decided to speak out. He gave a raw, on-the-block interview to tell his side of the story. If you're wondering where the Unc nickname came from, it's simple. Lil Jeff was Gen Z, while Rob was noticeably older, likely a millennial. The age gap was big enough for people to start calling him Uncle Rob. For this interview, Rob wasn't alone. He stood on a porch flanked by his Day One homies, Terror and OTF Black, keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings. They weren't just standing around, they were on full alert, checking left and right for any possible threats. And here's where it gets interesting. Rob started the interview by shutting down all the internet rumors about him being the OG shooter behind Lil Jeff's murder. That label, he wasn't claiming it. According to him, all the talk online had nothing to do with reality. Rob made it clear that he felt it was necessary to speak out, because at that time, the official investigation was still ongoing. During the interview, Trap City Rob didn't hold back. He spoke on something deeper than street politics. He called out how black communities are being set up through the very violence that drill music glorifies. According to him, many people are emotionally unprepared to recognize that the cycle of bloodshed isn't just a hood problem. It's a trap designed to keep black people underdeveloped and divided. Rob's unexpected take shook up the conversation, and instead of just fueling more street drama, it actually earned him respect. The hood started seeing him in a different light. One user praised him, saying, "Rob is what you call a grown man." Another quickly chimed in, adding, "These dudes are mature. Jeff was just a little immature kid running up on OGs." And then came a blunt reality check. one that hit hard for many. Jeff didn't think before he reacted. That's what separates a grown man from a little boy. OGs don't move the way Jeff did. OGs have rules and guidelines. Whether people agreed or not, the streets were talking. Despite all the praises, Trap City Rob stayed humble. He wasn't out here trying to flex, he was focused on breaking the cycle of violence. But the internet, it had other plans. At one point in the interview, the host brought up a wild viral meme making rounds on Reddit. The image? A photoshopped picture of Rob's face on Malcolm X's iconic photo with the caption, "Protect the Trap." If that wasn't enough, the meme went even further, suggesting that Rob should run for president, claiming he'd win in a landslide. But Rob wasn't feeling it. He admitted that he had seen the meme, but he shut down the idea that he was chasing internet fame. "That's not what I'm about," he made clear. To him, the streets were real life, not some clout-chasing playground. A lot of the bloodshed in Chicago comes down to one simple yet deadly thing: trolling. The moment someone brags about taking out an op or disrespects the dead, retaliation isn't far behind. But according to Trap City Rob, he's not about that life. In his interview with Block 2 Block, Rob didn't just talk about Lil Jeff's death, he broke down the deep-rooted beef between Trap City and Drill City that led to it. This wasn't just some random act of violence. This was a street war that had been brewing for a while. But Rob made one thing very clear: he isn't out here glorifying it. Sure, he listens to drill music, but the violence attached to it, he despises it. In his words, black people keep killing each other over things that don't even matter. And that's what really frustrates him. His stance on the situation is exactly why his supporters on Reddit, known as the Unk Gang, have been preaching this same message during the internet war between Drill City and Trap City that erupted after Lil Jeff's death. They aren't trying to fuel more drama, they're trying to change the conversation. But here's the harsh truth: while Rob and his fans hate the violence, Lil Jeff ultimately died because of it. And according to Bloodhound Q50's latest Instagram post, Lil Jeff wasn't just some young rookie caught up in the streets, he had been active. A video circulating online shows that before 2024, Lil Jeff was already in full drill mode, ski mask on, heavily armed, and moving like a trained assassin. His reputation wasn't just talk, he was living that life. In a past interview, Lil Jeff didn't hold back when talking about his life in the streets. He made it clear he had been active since he turned 18. But don't get it twisted, just because he officially jumped off the porch at 18 doesn't mean he was new to this. He had been learning the game long before that. Lil Jeff revealed that his older brother played a major role in shaping him into the person he became. And if you don't already know, that older brother was none other than J Boogie. Now here's where things get even deeper. J Boogie isn't just some random name in this story. He's actually from the same generation as Trap City Rob. That means back in the day, these two weren't enemies. They were actually cool with each other. So what changed? How did the relationship between these two hoods turn into a full-blown war? Trap City Rob finally gave some insight into the real breaking point during his Block 2 Block interview on YouTube. He confirmed that at one point, Trap City and Bloodhound were actually on good terms. There was no major beef, no tension, just street ties. But then everything flipped. According to Rob, the turning point happened when the Bloodhound snatched one of their homies' chains. And in the streets, that's an unforgivable sign of disrespect. From that moment on, the two crews were no longer cool, and the war between Trap City and Bloodhound was officially on. But if you really dig deeper, you'll see that the beef between Lil Jeff and Trap City Rob wasn't just about a stolen chain. For Jeff, it was personal. The real root of the feud, the death of his cousin, Z Money. Let's rewind for a second. At the start of 2022, a new name hit the Chicago drill scene: Bloodhound Lil Jeff. And unlike other up-and-comers, he didn't ease into the game. He came in hard. While Jeff always credited his friend, Vert, for introducing him to rap, it wasn't friendship that made him famous. It was his gruesome lyrics, violent music videos, and raw energy that made people take notice. Jeff wasn't just talking tough. He wanted the world to know that he was really living it. At one point, he even rapped about his own mother, saying she told him every day, "I pray you make it home." His response? "It's okay. I'm the one doing all the killing." That line shook people. But then, just as fast as he said it, he backtracked. He tried to laugh it off, saying it was all just music, just entertainment, nothing real. But the streets, they weren't buying it. But here's where things get really interesting. That particular track, it was actually a tribute, not just to anyone, but to his older brother, J Boogie, who was locked up behind bars. And with J Boogie out of the picture, someone else had to step up. That's when Z Money, Lil Jeff's cousin, took on the role of Big Bro. But Z Money wasn't just playing mentor, he was getting involved in Jeff's street life, handling business for him. With Z-Money backing him, Lil Jeff had the confidence to go even harder in the streets. But when Z-Money was taken out, that's when things got dead serious. For Lil Jeff, this wasn't just about rap. It wasn't just about the streets. It was about revenge. Z-Money wasn't just family to Lil Jeff. He was the backbone of his entire street movement. He played the role of a silent director, letting Jeff shine while he handled business in the background. But in 2023, everything would take a devastating turn. That year marked the end of a decade-long alliance between Trap City and Drill City. And the breaking point? The death of Z-Money. On a hot afternoon, March 16th, 2023, the unthinkable happened. Z-Money met a tragic and mysterious death, one that would shake up the streets forever. According to news reports, Z-Money was sitting in his car on the 1300 block of East 79th Street, near the 79th intersection in Kimbark. He was parked in front of a dry cleaner's store in the Avalon Park neighborhood when tragedy struck. Out of nowhere, a car pulled up, and before Z-Money even had time to react, bullets started flying. Whoever was behind that trigger came with intent. Z-Money was rushed to the University of Chicago Medical Center, but it was too late. He took his last breath in that hospital. His sudden and brutal death wasn't just a loss. It was a wake-up call for the Bloodhounds. This wasn't just another body dropped in the streets. This was a direct hit on their circle. But for Lil Jeff, it cut even deeper. Z-Money had been his shield, his protector ever since his older brother, J Boogie, got locked up. And now, that shield was gone. With Z-Money out of the picture, the streets weren't just mourning. They were preparing for what came next. After Z-Money's murder, Lil Jeff and his right-hand man, Q50, made sure his name would never be forgotten. They inked his name onto their skin, a permanent tribute to the man who had been their protector, their brother, their fallen hero. But while the streets mourned, Z-Money's family was left shattered. In 2023, a nonprofit newsroom covering gun violence in America, known as The Trace, did a deep dive into Z-Money's case, and what they uncovered was heartbreaking. His mother's voice trembled as she recounted the moment her entire world crumbled. She got a call from Z-Money's girlfriend, who delivered the soul-crushing news: Z-Money was gone. Still, she couldn't believe it. She had to see for herself. She immediately called the Chicago Medical Center, and they confirmed what she prayed wasn't true. But it wasn't enough. She needed to be there. She needed to look her son in the eyes one last time. When she arrived at the hospital, the doctor looked at her solemnly and told her what no mother should ever have to hear. He was dead on arrival. But then she asked a question that no parent should ever have to ask. How many times was he shot? The answer? Chilling. The doctor sighed and responded, "We stopped counting at 29. Let that sink in. 29 bullets. That day, Z-Money didn't just become another statistic. He became one of the 4,000 people fatally shot in Chicago over the last decade whose murderers still walk free. According to Chicago Police Department data, the homicide clearance rate remains painfully low. That means thousands of families, just like Z-Money's, are left grieving with no justice, no answers, just fear, pain, and the cold reality that in some neighborhoods, murder is just another day. Just when things seem to be cooling down, a new rumor hit the streets, one that would change everything. Word started spreading on Reddit that Z-Money wasn't taken out by outsiders. He was backdoored by his own old friends from Trap City. And if that was true, it was the ultimate betrayal. With that devastating revelation came the birth of a new monster. That's when Jeffrey Harris fully transformed into Bloodhound Lil Jeff, aka the Pistol Professor. He wasn't just a young rapper anymore. He was out for blood. The streets saw the swift, undeniable shift. 1 minute, he was just another rising drill rapper, and the next, he was making his name known in ways no one could ignore. Shortly after, Lil Jeff's wrath came down on 3 boys, BK, Monty, and Lil Rob, because they allegedly robbed him of his jewelry. And to make it worse, they didn't stop there. After snatching his chain, they publicly clowned the entire Bloodhound crew, saying they needed to stop wearing fake jewelry. That was a dangerous move, and it turned out to be a deadly mistake. The robbery wasn't worth the risk, because shortly after, both BK and Monty would pay with their lives. The tragic incident went down at Innovations High School, right in downtown Chicago, in an area known as the Loop. It was broad daylight, 12:30 p.m. BK Monty and Lil Rob had just stepped out of school for a lunch break, heading towards Washington Street and Wabash Avenue. But as busy as that area was, they never made it to lunch. 2 cars suddenly pulled up. Before the boys could react, the doors flew open and armed men jumped out, letting off rounds. It was a ruthless execution. According to CPD Deputy Chief John, a group of individuals exited the vehicles, opened fire, and hit both teenage students from Innovations High School multiple times. Just like that, the beef had turned into an all-out war. The victims were later identified as 16-year-old Robert Boston and 17-year-old Monterio Williams. 2 young lives gone in an instant. According to police reports, a woman who was walking on the sidewalk when the shots rang out barely escaped with her life. She later told authorities that a bullet grazed her coat. But just like so many other murders in the streets of Chicago, this one, it went cold. No suspects, no arrests, just 2 more names added to the long list of lives lost in the city's never-ending cycle of violence. Now, if you've been following this story, you already know who the streets suspect, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. We'll leave the detective work to the police. One thing is for sure though, death was lurking, and it was just waiting for the next time Lil Jeff went on a drill. But here's the craziest part. Lil Jeff's own death would go down as one of the most dramatic events in Chicago drill history, because he died doing what he was known for, catching his ops. Lil Jeff had always been about action, and if you ever doubted it, his lyrics told you everything you needed to know. One of his most infamous lines went like this: "Every time I see an op, I drop my mask and swing the door." And as it turns out, he wasn't just rapping, he meant every word. On June 8th, 2024, the streets witnessed what would become the biggest blow to the Bloodhound crew. In broad daylight, Lil Jeff, Q50, and one other guy were out, standing on business. But this time, the game didn't go in their favor. The moment everything changed was caught on surveillance footage. In the now infamous clip, Lil Jeff and his crew were seen literally swinging open the car door, jumping out, and firing shots in the heart of Trap City. The footage, too gruesome to show in full, clearly identifies the black SUV as belonging to Lil Jeff's squad. And just like his lyrics had warned, they weren't there to talk. As the car rolled to a stop on South Rhodes Avenue, they spotted their target, and in a split second, Lil Jeff was already in motion. He flung the door open and started firing. The target, a young man in bright yellow shorts, immediately ducked behind a car, scrambling for cover. But Lil Jeff? He wasn't letting up. Even as the man ran for his life, sprinting toward the porch of a nearby building, Jeff kept chasing, gun drawn, still firing. And this is where things took a shocking turn. I already knew Chicago's drill scene was ruthless, but this was something else. Lil Jeff, dressed in a black Nike hoodie and gray joggers, was seen fully committing to the chase. He wasn't stopping, he wasn't hesitating, and his homies didn't go with him. While Jeff sprinted after his target, his crew stayed back by the car, still firing at the gray vehicle. It was straight out of an action movie, but this was real life. Lil Jeff had rapped over and over about hunting down his enemies, about chasing them into their homes, and on June 8th, 2024, he finally did it. But what he didn't know, he was running straight into his own fate. But this was a one-time only experience for Lil Jeff, his first and last. The moment he charged into that porch, thinking he had his target cornered, someone inside was already waiting, and they let the bullets fly. In a split second, Lil Jeff was sent flying backward, head over heels, crashing to the ground. There, on the porch where he had chased his victim, Bloodhound Lil Jeff lay lifeless. Word on the street, the shooter didn't just fire a few rounds, they emptied the whole magazine into him. Even in the same video footage, you could see the panic set in. Q50 and the other guy, realizing what had just happened, rushed toward the porch, trying to cover their fallen leader. But whoever was inside wasn't done yet. The shooter unleashed hell. The gunfire was so intense, Q50 and the other guy had no choice but to retreat, scrambling for a way out of the deadly crossfire. And just like that, the man who had once been feared, the pistol professor himself, was gone. The news spread like wildfire. As soon as Lil Jeff's death hit social media, fans and fellow rappers flooded the internet with tributes. One of his close associates, Lil Scoom89, took to Instagram stories with raw emotion, mourning the loss of his friend. "I love you, and I'ma be with you real soon," he wrote. He followed it up with another heartbreaking message. "Damn, Bruda, this S don't feel real." Even well-known artist and video creator AMF Visuals shared his own tribute, a simple but powerful post, a picture of Bloodhound Lil Jeff and with a heartbreak emoji. Just like that, the monster the streets created had met his brutal and inevitable fate. Before his death, Lil Jeff and AMF Visuals had collaborated on a music video for their song Ah, a track that, at first listen, just sounded like another hard-hitting drill anthem. I remember hearing it for the first time. The beat was cold, the energy was raw, and the flow was undeniable. But then I listened closer. That's when I realized Lil Jeff wasn't just rapping about street life. He was literally describing the high school double homicide. And the title, Ah, wasn't just a random ad-lib. It was the exact sound one of the victims made while gasping for their last breath. Chilling. As expected, the internet was divided over Lil Jeff's sudden and violent end. Some fans mourned his loss, while others saw it as the inevitable consequence of the life he lived. One user didn't hold back, commenting, "The energy you put out always comes back to you." Another added, "Trying to chase somebody into their own house off the street is the ultimate crash out move." And honestly, that's exactly what it was. Lil Jeff thought he was in control, thought he was living out the stories he rapped about, but instead, he ran straight into his own demise. Then came the comparisons. One comment brought up King Von, another Chicago drill legend whose name carries just as much weight in street history. The user wrote, "I feel like Von represented Chicago more than Jeff. Yes, Jeff was a window into the streets of modern day Chicago wars, but Von was more of what happens to most gang members in Chicago. And in a way, that sums up everything. Von was a product of the city. Lil Jeff, he became a symbol of how brutal the new generation of Chicago's drill scene had become." King Von's name always comes up in these conversations, for good reason. Unlike many rappers who just talked about the streets, Von actually lived it. He had real cases, real bodies tied to his name, and somehow he beat them all. For almost a decade straight, he was deep in the wars, and unlike Lil Jeff, he started young, just like most gang members in Chicago. Now, if you're a true fan of Chicago drill, or like me, you follow the music, the culture, and the history, then you've probably already noticed something. Lil Jeff's rise to fame followed the exact same blueprint that made King Von a legend. If that connection isn't clicking for you yet, let me break it down. When I researched King Von, I didn't just see a rapper with a tough past, I saw something way darker. Von didn't just allegedly kill people, he rapped about it, he bragged about it, he taunted his victims in his music, and if you go by the FBI's official definition, he would fit the criteria of a serial killer. According to the FBI, serial murder is defined as the unlawful killing of two or more victims by the same offender in separate events. Now here's where Lil Jeff takes things even further. Not only did Jeff claim in his music that he had more bodies than King Von, but he made sure the world knew about it. He didn't just rap about his kills, he mocked his victims. That's exactly why the internet keeps comparing him to Von. Bloodhound Lil Jeff wasn't just a Chicago drill rapper, he was moving in King Von's exact footsteps. So much so that in an interview with DJU, he was straight up asked if he considered Von his mentor. Because at the end of the day, Lil Jeff wasn't just following a drill lifestyle, he was following a blueprint. Lil Jeff might have tried to downplay it, claiming that everyone does their own thing in Chirac, but let's be real. Anyone paying attention could see he looked up to King Von. He didn't just follow in Von's footsteps, he lived the same way, moved the same way, and built his reputation the same way. But while Von's story was built over a decade of street wars, Lil Jeff's rise was fueled by one key narrative, his so-called 10 body count claim. That was the one thing that set him apart, and DJU didn't forget to bring it up. Then came one of the wildest moments in Jeff's career. Shortly after Khalil from Tree Mob was killed, word on the street pointed the blame directly at Bloodhound Lil Jeff. And what did Jeff do? Did he deny it, lay low, let people speculate? Nope. He hopped on IG Live. The footage showed Lil Jeff, Q50, and a few others flexing heavy artillery and wilding out on Instagram Live, making sure everyone watching knew exactly what time it was. Even though the background noise was loud, you could still hear Lil Jeff drop a cryptic message, "I'm now counting my toes." And if you get the metaphor, then you already know exactly what he was saying. If you've counted past your fingers, that means you've hit double digits. Lil Jeff wasn't just rapping about violence, he was keeping score. As soon as Lil Jeff's body count claim started going viral, the internet was split in two. Some people refused to believe it, brushing it off as just another drill rapper trying to boost his image. But then, there were the ones who believed every word. Because let's be real, if Lil Jeff said he did it, he probably did. And he wasn't just talking about it, he was tattooing his record on his skin. Not long after his infamous IG Live, he posted a new photo showing fresh ink on his neck. The design, a row of teardrop tattoos. The meaning, if you know, you know. And just to make sure everyone got the message, he captioned the post, "Go do the math, if you know, you know." Damn. Chicago is not for everyone. These young dudes out here moving like the police don't exist. But it didn't stop there. Lil Jeff even threw in a sports reference, comparing his body count to NBA championship rings. He said, "If I catch one more, I'm like Bill Russell, you know I really play ball." And if you get the reference, then you already know what he was saying. He was claiming to have more bodies than Bill Russell had championship wins. But here's where things take a disturbing turn. While digging into Lil Jeff's alleged body count, I came across a wild post in the Cheericology subreddit, and this one had people talking. The claim, Lil Jeff didn't just put in work in Chicago, he allegedly had bodies in Milwaukee too. Word on the street was that he was respected out there because he was a hired gun, paid to take out 2 people. And then it hit me. Is that why Lil Jeff modeled his whole persona after the infamous Milwaukee serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer? I mean, think about it. Lil Jeff Dahmer of Chicago Drill? That name fits his reputation too well. But at the end of the day, it's just downright disturbing. In the natural order of the streets, Lil Jeff's fate was almost inevitable. He was killed by the same violence he glorified. As soon as news of his death started circulating, the internet had plenty to say. One comment stood out. He killed Lil Rob, now he got by Big Rob. It might sound like a joke, but it speaks to a brutal truth. In this life, there's no way out except death. But here's the big question. If the police officially dropped Trap City Rob's murder charge, that means the shooter is still out there. So who did it? That mystery remains unsolved. And just when I thought I had some answers, I stumbled across a chilling comment on Reddit that I'll leave you with. I said Rob ain't pull it. The real shooter will probably never know because they lying low and not publicly claiming it. And with that, I'll leave it up to you. What do you think happened? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And don't forget to share this video with your friends. Click the card on your screen for more deep dives into the wild world of Chicago drill. See you in the next video.